Step cautiously into the shadows of the UK's most haunted streets, where even locals warn, don't walk alone after dark. From echoing footsteps in deserted alleys to ghostly apparitions peering from forgotten windows, these 16 streets hide chilling secrets that have terrified generations. Some say time itself bends here, trapping unwary travelers in eerie moments from the past. Others speak of restless spirits, phantom soldiers, and spectral figures that vanish when approached. Tonight, we journey through these haunted avenues, revealing true ghost stories, unexplained phenomena, and the dark legends that make these streets some of Britain's most terrifying. If you dare to explore more haunted streets and uncover chilling true ghost stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our journey into the unknown. 1 Pluckley Village, Kent. I had always been fascinated by haunted places, but nothing could prepare me for my first night in Pluckley Village, Kent. Known as the UK's most haunted village, I decided to spend a weekend there, hoping to see for myself if the legends were true. From the moment I arrived, a strange, almost tangible tension hung in the air. The quaint cottages and winding lanes looked peaceful in daylight, but as the sun dipped behind the horizon, an unnatural hush settled over the village. I decided to take a walk along the main street, my camera and flashlight in hand. My heart was racing, not entirely from fear, but from anticipation. Every step on the cobbled road echoed unnaturally, and the cool night air felt heavier, almost as if it were watching me. I passed by an old inn, reputedly the site of a ghastly murder centuries ago. The windows were dark, yet I thought I saw a flicker of movement inside, an elderly man perhaps, or maybe a shadow that wasn't mine. I stopped, holding my breath, feeling a chill creep up my spine. As I continued, I approached the village churchyard. The stories I had read about spectral monks and headless apparitions suddenly felt real. I remember walking past a gravestone, and my foot brushed against something cold and metallic. I looked down, nothing was there, but the sensation lingered. My mind raced with rational explanations, yet I couldn't shake off the feeling that someone, or something, was close. I called out softly, half hoping for a reply, half hoping there wouldn't be one. Silence. Just the rustle of the trees and a distant owl. Then it happened. From the corner of my eye, I saw a figure gliding along the path ahead, transparent, pale, and unnervingly silent. It was a woman in Victorian attire, her face obscured by a dark veil. My first instinct was to run, but my legs froze. I felt an odd sadness emanating from her, a melancholy that made my chest tighten. For a fleeting moment, it seemed like she noticed me. Our eyes, or what I could perceive as eyes, met, and I felt a strange connection, as if she were trying to communicate her story. Then, just as suddenly, she vanished into the night, leaving me gasping and trembling. I spent the rest of the night walking cautiously through the village, every shadow and distant sound magnified by fear and excitement. I spoke to a local bartender the next morning, and he confirmed that many visitors report seeing figures just like the one I had encountered, spectral women, shadowy men, and even phantom children playing near the old churchyard. He said that residents sometimes avoid certain streets after dark, especially when the fog rolls in, because the energy there is different. Heavy. Almost watchful. Leaving Pluckley, I felt a mixture of relief and awe. I had hoped to witness something paranormal, and I had, but more than that, I had experienced the village itself, as if it were alive, breathing, and aware of every step I took. It's an experience I will never forget, a night where fear and fascination intertwined, and where the thin veil between the living and the dead seemed, just for a moment, to lift. 2A75, Scotland. I had heard whispers about A75, known ominously as the Ghost Road, in Scotland, long before I decided to drive along it late one October evening. The locals had warned me, don't drive this road alone after dark. Of course, my curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see if the legends of phantom trucks, spectral figures, and sudden chills were true. As I started along the road, the fading sunset painted the sky in deep purples and grays. The landscape around me was empty fields, mist rolling off the distant hills, and gnarled trees casting strange shadows over the tarmac. The further I drove, the heavier the atmosphere felt, almost like the air itself was holding its breath. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, and I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in the quiet of the car. About 20 minutes into the drive, I noticed a large truck ahead, its headlights dim and flickering. As I approached, I realized it wasn't moving. I slowed down, cautiously trying to pass, but as I drew closer, my stomach sank. The truck seemed wrong. Its outline was blurry, and I could make out no driver. Suddenly, it vanished. One moment it was there, the next, nothing. I blinked, unsure if my eyes were playing tricks. My heart raced. Was it a mirage, or had I really just seen a ghostly vehicle? I decided to stop at a small levee to gather my thoughts. Stepping out of the car, the cold hit me immediately, sharper than the autumn air should have allowed. The mist swirled around my legs, and I could hear faint, almost mechanical sounds, like a truck engine humming far away, but with no source. A shiver ran down my spine as I caught sight of a figure standing at the edge of the mist. It was a man, tall, wearing what looked like a 1950s driver's uniform, his face pale and expressionless. My mind raced with disbelief, but my legs refused to move. He just stood there, motionless, staring directly at me. Then, almost imperceptibly, he began to walk alongside the road, always keeping a perfect pace with the curve of the highway. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread mixed with curiosity. My rational mind tried to tell me it was a local or a prankster, but something about his presence felt wrong. My instincts screamed at me to leave, so I jumped back into the car, started the engine, and sped off, glancing nervously in the rearview mirror. He was gone. Later, I learned from a local innkeeper that many travelers along A75 have reported similar experiences: shadowy figures, trucks appearing out of nowhere, and sudden drops in temperature. One story that stayed with me was about a driver in the 1960s who reportedly vanished on this stretch, only to reappear hours later, pale and shaken, claiming he had been escorted by ghostly figures through the fog. It seemed that A75 had a memory, a way of replaying tragic events for those who dared travel its length at night. Even days later, I could still feel the heaviness of that road in my chest, and my mind couldn't stop picturing the man in the mist. Driving A75 was not just a test of courage. It was an experience that left a lingering, unexplainable chill, a reminder that some roads are haunted not just by history, but by something far darker and alive. 3 Bluebell Hill, Kent. I had driven past Bluebell Hill countless times in daylight, admiring the gentle hills and sweeping views of Kent. But as I approached it one foggy October evening, the landscape took on an entirely different, unsettling personality. I had heard the tales: phantom hitchhikers, ghostly vehicles, and sudden accidents attributed to something beyond the natural. I told myself I was there to investigate, curiosity stronger than fear, but as soon as I arrived, my confidence wavered. The air was damp, carrying a faint metallic scent that reminded me of a rainy cemetery. As I navigated the winding road, the headlights of my car barely penetrated the thick fog. I slowed down, my senses hyper-alert. Something about this hill made me feel both watched and entirely alone at the same time. Every rustle of leaves, every distant clatter of metal, seemed amplified, echoing through the mist. My hands gripped the wheel tighter as a chill ran down my spine. It wasn't long before I noticed a figure on the side of the road, a young woman in a pale dress, thumb extended in the universal gesture of a hitchhiker. My heart leapt, a mix of fear and instinctive concern. I slowed the car, considering stopping, but as I approached, my rational mind clashed with gut instinct. There was something off about her. The closer I got, the more she seemed to shimmer, almost translucent, like smoke curling in the wind. My breath caught as she turned toward me, her eyes wide with desperation, yet somehow empty. Before I could react, she vanished, gone in an instant, leaving only the faintest outline in the mist. My pulse raced. I parked the car at a safe distance, trying to calm myself, but then I heard the sound, a scraping, metallic noise, like brakes locking, coming from the bend ahead. I couldn't see anything through the fog, yet I could feel an oppressive presence pressing in on me, cold and heavy, as if the hill itself were alive. I learned later from locals that Blue Bell Hill has been a site of countless road accidents over the decades, many occurring under strange circumstances, drivers swearing they saw figures appear out of nowhere, or lights darting across the road. Some claim the spirits are victims, eternally replaying the moments before their deaths, while others believe malevolent entities lurk, drawn to the living to repeat the hill's tragic history. As I finally drove off, the fog lifting slightly in the early morning hours, I couldn't shake the image of the ghostly hitchhiker. Her silent plea, the eerie emptiness in her eyes, and the sense that she was warning me, her story, or perhaps the hill's story, embedded in the cold air, I felt a mix of awe, fear, and sorrow. I realized that some places carry memories too strong to fade, where tragedy and time intertwine to create a living echo of the past. Even days later, whenever I close my eyes, I see her standing there on the roadside, silently asking for help, forever trapped in a loop that no human presence can fully disrupt. Blue Bell Hill isn't just a road or a hill, it's a reminder that some ghosts aren't stories, they're fragments of real lives, lingering, waiting, and watching. For B3212, Dartmoor. I had always been drawn to Dartmoor, with its vast moors, twisting lanes, and eerie, fog-laden landscape. But the B3212 had a reputation that sent chills even through the bravest locals, spectral figures crossing the road at night, phantom carriages, and a sense of being followed. I decided to see it for myself, driving alone one late October evening, when the sun had long set and the mist began rolling in like ghostly blankets across the moor. The road was narrow and winding, flanked on both sides by gnarled trees and low stone walls. The silence was overwhelming, not even the wind dared disturb it. My headlights barely penetrated the fog, and every shadow seemed to twist and shift as I passed. I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my ears, each beat echoing in the still night. The further I went, the more I felt eyes upon me, though the darkness revealed nothing. About 10 minutes in, I saw it, a figure standing on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was a hitchhiker, but something about the way it stood unnerved me. It was motionless, pale, and impossibly thin, dressed in what seemed like early 20th century clothing. I slowed my car, my mind racing between curiosity and pure fear. The moment I made eye contact, I felt a wave of sorrow wash over me, heavy and ancient, pressing on my chest as if the figure's despair was real, tangible. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the figure vanished into the mist. I blinked, convinced my eyes were deceiving me, but the chill in the air confirmed something had been there. Shaking, I continued driving slowly, but every bend of the road seemed to conceal shadows just out of reach of my headlights. I could hear whispers, or perhaps it was the wind, but the words were indistinguishable, urgent yet distant. My hands were clammy, gripping the wheel tightly, and I felt an irresistible urge to look in the rearview mirror. That's when I saw movement behind me. Not in the road, but above it. A faint, flickering shape, like a horse-drawn carriage from a bygone era, racing silently across the fog. No sound came from it, yet I felt the reverberations in my chest, a vibration that seemed to pulse with the beat of my own fear. My rational mind screamed to leave, to drive faster, but some part of me wanted to understand what I was witnessing. Later, I spoke with locals at a small inn near the moor. They told me B3212 had been the site of countless accidents and mysterious disappearances over the decades. Many travelers claim to have seen spectral carriages and apparitions of travelers who never reached their destinations. Some believe the moor itself retains the echoes of tragedy, that the spirits of those lost wander the foggy roads, replaying their final moments. Even now, I can't stop thinking about that night. The figure, the silent carriage, the oppressive sorrow, it lingers in my mind, a reminder that some roads are alive with the past. B3212 isn't just a road, it's a corridor where time blurs and where the living brush against the unresolved stories of those long gone. Driving there, alone in the dark, you realize that some legends aren't tales, they are memories that refuse to fade. 5 M6 Motorway, England. I had driven the M6 countless times during the day, but late one autumn night, I decided to see it in a different light, alone, after dusk, when the motorway's vast stretches become eerily quiet. The locals had warned me, some stretches of the M6 have more than just traffic accidents, people vanish or see things you won't believe. I laughed at first, thinking it was exaggeration. But as I entered the northern section near Staffordshire, a sense of unease immediately settled over me. The motorway, usually bustling with cars and trucks, was almost deserted. My headlights reflected off the wet asphalt, stretching the road ahead like a narrow, silver ribbon. The night air was damp and carried the faint smell of petrol and wet earth. The hum of my engine seemed unnaturally loud, echoing through the surrounding fields. Every so often, I glimpsed shadows flitting just beyond the edge of the road, could be trees, could be something else. About 20 minutes into my drive, I noticed a car parked strangely at the hard shoulder, engine off, lights flickering. At first, I assumed someone had broken down. As I drew closer, my heart rate spiked. The car was empty, but I could swear I saw a faint figure moving inside, just a blur, too fleeting to identify. I slowed, straining to see, and then suddenly the car vanished entirely, leaving only the empty asphalt stretching ahead. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, a chill creeping up my spine. Then came the sounds. At first, faint, metal scraping, tires on wet tarmac, a soft wail, but unmistakably human in origin. My eyes darted around, searching, but the motorway seemed perfectly empty. The hairs on my arms stood on end. I realized that in the years locals have warned me about, many travelers have reported seeing ghostly cars speeding past them, or shadowy figures appearing at the roadside, sometimes even merging with the traffic before vanishing. I now understood why. A few miles further, I saw something that froze me completely. A man, standing in the center of my lane. Pale, drenched, and completely still, as if waiting. I slammed the brakes, my car skidding slightly on the wet surface. He didn't move. My pulse thundered in my ears. Rational thought fled, there was no way a living person could have been standing there unnoticed. As I watched, he began to dissolve into mist, evaporating as though the motorway itself had swallowed him. The rest of my journey was tense, every shadow and distant light magnified by my fear. When I finally reached a safe spot and parked, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Later, speaking with a local lorry driver, I learned that many stretches of the M6 are infamous for paranormal sightings. Ghostly hitchhikers, spectral vehicles, and sudden apparitions have been reported for decades, often associated with tragic accidents that occurred at the very spots I had driven. Some say the spirits linger, replaying the moments before their untimely deaths, bound to the road where fate claimed them. Even now, thinking back on that night, I can feel the tension, the cold brush of something unseen, and the unnerving sense that the motorway itself watches those who dare to drive it alone. The M6 is not just a road, it's a corridor where reality and the unknown intersect, where past tragedies refuse to rest, and where every journey at night is a dance with shadows that never truly disappear. 6 Pendle Hill, Lancashire. I had always been fascinated by Pendle Hill, the steep, looming silhouette rising above Lancashire, notorious for its dark history of witches and unexplained phenomena. I thought I was prepared when I decided to hike up the hill alone one cold November evening, carrying only a small backpack, a flashlight, and my camera. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and the mist began curling around the trees, I quickly realized this place was far more unsettling than I had imagined. The narrow path wound through dense heather and twisted trees, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. Every step I took seemed amplified in the silence. The wind whispered through the gorse, sounding almost like voices muttering secrets just beyond comprehension. I felt an inexplicable heaviness pressing down on my shoulders, a combination of fatigue and something else, something intangible, like the eyes of the past watching me. About halfway up the hill, I noticed movement in the fog. At first, I thought it was a fellow hiker, but the figure appeared and vanished repeatedly, always at the edge of my vision. It seemed to drift across the landscape, untethered to the ground, moving too smoothly to be human. My pulse quickened, yet curiosity held me in place. I whispered to myself, "It's just the wind. It's just the mist," but my voice sounded hollow against the eerie silence. Suddenly, I heard a low, almost mournful chant. I froze. The sound seemed to emanate from all around me, rising from the earth itself. My instincts screamed at me to leave, yet I felt rooted in place, drawn toward the source despite my fear. As I approached a clearing, the mist thickened, and I could make out faint figures, women, dressed in garments that seemed centuries old, their faces pale and unreadable. They stood in a circle, motionless, yet the weight of their presence was undeniable. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized the tales were true. Pendle Hill had not forgotten its dark history. The witches accused during the infamous 1612 trials were said to haunt these slopes, seeking vengeance or perhaps justice. One figure turned slowly toward me, raising a hand, and I felt an overwhelming sadness, centuries of fear, pain, and accusation pressing down on my chest. I blinked, and the figures were gone, leaving only the swirling fog and the echo of their whispers. As I made my way down the hill, my flashlight catching only glimpses of twisted branches and shadowed rocks, I kept thinking about the local legends. Travelers often report apparitions on Pendle Hill, shadowy figures, disembodied voices, and sudden chills even in the middle of summer. Many who wander alone at night tell of being watched, their paths subtly redirected by unseen hands, as if the spirits of the past still control the land. When I finally reached the base of the hill, the mist had lifted slightly, but the memory of what I had seen and felt lingered. Even days later, I could feel a trace of that oppressive presence, a reminder that Pendle Hill was alive with history, tragedy, and restless spirits. The hill is more than just a scenic landmark. It's a place where the past bleeds into the present, where stories of fear, injustice, and mystery are written into the very soil. Pendle Hill is not a place to visit lightly, especially after dark. It teaches you that some landscapes carry more than just physical weight. They bear the heavy echoes of human history, of lives lost and secrets never revealed, and they wait patiently for the next curious soul to feel their presence. 7A666, Lancashire. I had heard about the haunted reputation of the A6 road in Cumbria from a local pub owner, who swore that anyone driving late at night had a high chance of encountering something unexplainable. Naturally, my curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to take a solo drive one foggy November evening. The moment I turned onto the A6, the feeling of isolation was immediate, long stretches of road flanked by dark forests, with only my headlights piercing through the mist. The first half hour was eerily quiet, with only the hum of my engine and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. As I drove deeper into the night, a sense of being watched began to settle over me, a prickling sensation crawling across my skin. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally along the side of the road, and the fog thickened to the point where even my rearview mirror offered nothing but gray whiteness. It was then that I noticed a figure on the roadside, a man, seemingly stranded, waving his arms for help. I slowed down, debating whether to stop. My instincts screamed caution, but my curiosity held me in place. As I approached, I could see his features more clearly, pale, gaunt, and strangely static, as though he were carved from the fog itself. When I tried to make eye contact, the figure didn't move, didn't breathe, yet I felt an intense sense of despair radiating from him. Suddenly, as I blinked, he was gone. I slammed on the brakes instinctively, my heart hammering, but there was nothing, no one, no car, no footprints. Only the empty road and the lingering chill in the air. My hands shook as I gripped the wheel, telling myself it was my imagination, yet deep down I knew it wasn't. Locals had told me about ghostly hitchhikers on the A6, apparitions of travelers who had died in past accidents, forever replaying their last moments. I had just experienced it firsthand. Not 10 minutes later, the fog thickened even more, and a strange sound reached my ears, the screech of brakes and the roar of an engine, yet no vehicles were in sight. My pulse raced as I glanced around frantically. Then, in my peripheral vision, I saw headlights approaching at impossible speed, only to vanish as I looked directly at them. It was a chilling reminder of the numerous unexplained crashes along this road, some attributed to phantom vehicles that appear out of nowhere. By the time I reached a more populated area, my hands were still shaking, my mind reeling from the night's events. I parked at a nearby service station and tried to gather my thoughts. Talking to a few locals, I learned that the A6 has claimed countless lives over the decades, and many believe that the spirits of the deceased haunt the road, sometimes guiding drivers to safety, sometimes warning, and occasionally manifesting to relive their own tragic ends. Even now, weeks later, I can't forget that night. The sense of despair, the sudden apparitions, and the oppressive stillness linger in my mind. Driving the A6 road isn't just a journey, it's a confrontation with the unknown, a place where the past refuses to rest, and where the living brush against the echoes of tragedies that remain unresolved. If you ever travel the A6 at night, remember, it's not just a road. It's a corridor of memories, of lost souls, and of lingering despair, waiting silently for the next traveler to witness its secrets. 8 Electric Brae, Scotland. York is famous for its history, cobblestone streets, and medieval architecture, but few know that the high street has a dark side, whispered about among locals for centuries. I had always been fascinated by ghost stories, and when I heard about eerie happenings on High Street, I knew I had to experience it firsthand. One foggy evening in late October, I wandered the street alone, armed only with a flashlight and my camera, hoping to capture something, anything. The street, bustling during the day, was almost deserted now. The dim glow from the street lamps cast long shadows that twisted across the ancient stone buildings. The air was damp, carrying the faint scent of old bricks and decaying leaves. Every step I took echoed unnaturally against the narrow alleyways, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. About halfway down the street, I noticed movement near a closed shop. At first, I thought it was another pedestrian, but as I approached, the figure dissolved into the mist. A chill ran down my spine, and my breath came out in small, visible clouds. Then I heard it, a soft, sorrowful sigh, almost like someone whispering in anguish. I froze, straining to hear more. The sound seemed to come from the old building above the shop, the windows dark and lifeless, yet the energy felt heavy, oppressive. Suddenly, a shadow passed across the cobblestones. It was human-shaped, tall, and cloaked in a dark garment that flickered in and out of view. I tried to speak, to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. The figure stopped, and I could feel eyes boring into me. An overwhelming sadness and loneliness radiated from it, so raw and tangible that my chest tightened. I wanted to turn and run, but curiosity held me rooted to the spot. Then it moved again, gliding silently along the street, vanishing as suddenly as it appeared. My heart pounded, and I realized I was shaking uncontrollably. I decided to retreat, but as I turned, I noticed footprints on the wet cobblestones, bare, yet too large to be mine. They led away from me, stopping abruptly at the middle of the street. I couldn't explain it. Later, I spoke to a local historian who shared the street's tragic history. Centuries ago, this part of York was home to merchants, travelers, and, according to legend, a number of wrongful deaths and mysterious disappearances. Many locals believe that the spirits of those who suffered injustice still linger, replaying fragments of their lives to anyone brave enough, or foolish enough, to witness them. Even days later, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The image of that sorrowful shadow, the whispering sighs, and the cold sensation pressing against my back haunted me. High Street in York isn't just a historical landmark. It's a place where the past clings stubbornly to the present, where echoes of pain, loss, and unresolved stories linger, waiting for the next unsuspecting visitor. Walking alone along High Street at night is a lesson in humility. You learn that some streets carry more than just stone and mortar, they carry memories, emotions, and a presence that defies explanation. The history of York is alive here, in ways that you can see, feel, and never forget. 9. Platt Lane, Lancashire. I've walked Fleet Street countless times during the day, but I had never experienced it after dark, alone, with only the faint glow of street lamps and my flashlight guiding the way. Locals had warned me, Fleet Street has shadows that linger long after the day ends. You'll feel them watching. I thought it was an exaggeration, until that night. The air was damp, carrying the faint scent of old newspapers and roasted coffee from closed cafes. The historic buildings loomed overhead, their facades shadowed and silent. The streets were unusually quiet, except for the distant echo of my footsteps on the cobblestones. A sense of unease settled over me, a feeling I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it. As I approached a narrow alley connecting two sections of Fleet Street, I saw a figure standing motionless in the mist. At first, I thought it was a street performer, but the figure didn't move, didn't breathe. Its attire was strange, Victorian-era clothing, complete with a long coat and top hat, but what unnerved me most were the eyes, hollow, dark voids that seemed to pierce right through me. I froze, my heart racing, unsure whether to approach or flee. Then I heard it, a soft, almost mournful whisper, echoing off the brick walls. "Leave, now." The voice was low and chilling, sending shivers down my spine. I could feel the oppressive weight of the building's history pressing down around me. Fleet Street, once the hub of London's press, had seen more than just newspapers. It had seen duels, murders, and mysterious deaths. The locals weren't exaggerating. Something truly lingered here. Suddenly, the figure moved. Not in a natural way, but as if gliding over the cobblestones. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt rooted to the spot. I watched as it disappeared into the fog at the end of the alley, leaving only the echo of its steps and the faint scent of damp earth and smoke. I realized then that the street itself seemed alive, holding memories of every tragic event, every whisper of injustice, and every soul lost to time. A few minutes later, as I continued along Fleet Street, I saw shadows flit across the windows of deserted offices. Occasionally, reflections in the glass would show figures standing behind me, only to vanish when I turned around. My pulse pounded, the city's history felt tangible, almost suffocating. Locals later told me about the ghostly editors and vanishing reporters, apparitions said to haunt the very offices where they had worked, replaying their final days or lamenting unfinished stories. By the time I reached St. Dunstan's Church, I was shaking, my flashlight trembling in my hand. I had witnessed only fragments of the street's haunted past, yet they left a lasting impression. Fleet Street isn't just another road in London, it's a living testament to history, to lives that ended abruptly, and to stories that demand to be remembered. Even now, I can feel the chill creeping into my memories, a reminder that some streets hold more than brick and mortar. Fleet Street carries shadows, whispers, and the lingering presence of those who never truly left. Walking it alone after dark isn't merely a stroll, it's a confrontation with the past, a dance with the unseen, and a lesson in humility before the ghosts that refuse to rest. 10, Old Knoll Road, West Midlands. I had always heard that the Shambles in York was one of the most charming streets in England, with its narrow cobbled paths and overhanging medieval buildings. But charm often hides secrets, and locals whispered of strange occurrences that few dared to talk about openly. One chilly October evening, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to explore the street after sunset, alone. The cobblestones were slick with recent rain, reflecting the dim glow of flickering street lamps. The narrow alleyways and crooked timber-framed buildings gave the street an almost claustrophobic feeling. Every step echoed unnaturally, as though the street itself were amplifying my presence. I tried to brush off the uneasy feeling, telling myself it was just the eeriness of an old street, but instinctively, I knew something was watching me. As I wandered further, I noticed movement at the upper windows of the buildings. Shadows flitted past, too quick to be human. The closer I got to the middle of the street, the heavier the air became, thick with a cold that seemed unnatural. Suddenly, I heard soft whispers. Indistinct murmurs as if dozens of people were talking in hushed, urgent tones. I froze, listening, trying to pinpoint the source, but the voices seemed to come from all directions at once. Then I saw her, a woman in a faded, Victorian-style dress, standing in the doorway of a shop long closed. Her face was pale, almost ghostly, and her eyes seemed to follow me, hollow and sorrowful. I felt a knot of fear tighten in my stomach, yet I couldn't look away. She stepped forward without a sound, and I felt the temperature drop sharply around me. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs felt rooted. As she drifted past me, I caught a faint scent of lavender and smoke, and my mind raced. Who was she? What had bound her to this street? A local shopkeeper later told me that the woman was believed to be the spirit of a former resident, tragically murdered centuries ago, whose soul never left the Shambles. Witnesses claimed she often appears to lone travelers, silently replaying the trauma of her last moments. A few steps later, the whispering voices intensified. I spun around and saw shadowy figures in the alleyways, moving slowly and deliberately. Some were dressed in period attire, others indistinct, like dark smudges in the fog. I realized then that the Shambles is more than a street, it's a vessel for centuries of unresolved sorrow and tragedy. Every building, every corner, seemed to carry a memory too strong to fade. I hurried to the street's exit, my flashlight flickering with each step. Even as I left, I felt the street's gaze linger on me, as if judging whether I would respect its secrets. That night, the Shambles had shown me fragments of its haunted past, and I knew I would never forget the oppressive sadness, the whispering voices, and the silent figures that seemed trapped between centuries. The Shambles in York is beautiful by day, but by night it transforms into a corridor of history and hauntings. Walking it alone after dark is not for the faint of heart. It's a street where the past never truly dies, where sorrow and tragedy linger, and where the next visitor might just feel the gaze of the ghosts who call it home. 11A229, South England. I had always thought Chester was quaint and picturesque, with its Tudor-style buildings and historic streets. But the locals warned me, Church Street has a side that most visitors never see. One late autumn evening, when the air was crisp and mist curled along the cobblestones, I decided to explore the street alone, curious to see what the whispers were all about. The street was nearly deserted, except for the faint glow of lamps that cast elongated shadows across the narrow thoroughfare. The buildings towered over me, some with overhanging timber frames, giving the feeling of walking through a tunnel of history. Every step I took echoed ominously, and I felt a chill creep along my spine, as if the street itself were watching. As I neared the center of Church Street, I noticed movement near a closed pub. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but then I saw him, a man in 18th century attire, with a long coat and tricorn hat, standing perfectly still on the sidewalk. His posture was rigid, almost unnatural, and I felt an intense wave of sorrow and longing radiating from him. I froze, unsure whether to approach or retreat. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, almost like a warning. "Turn back." The voice was low, desperate, yet impossible to locate. Goosebumps rose on my arms as I tried to make sense of what I was experiencing. The man began to move slowly toward me, gliding rather than walking, and the streetlights flickered as if responding to his presence. My heart pounded, and I instinctively stepped back, but the space around him seemed to stretch unnaturally. As he passed, I noticed something even stranger. Footprints appeared behind him, though the cobblestones were dry, and the prints were filled with a cold, icy sensation that made my skin prickle. I realized this was not a trick of my imagination. Local lore had mentioned ghostly parishioners who linger near the old churches along Church Street, spirits of those who had died tragically or without proper rites. A few minutes later, a soft, echoing bell tolled from the old church tower, though I knew it was long since decommissioned. The sound reverberated through the street and seemed to carry with it the presence of unseen congregations. I saw shadows moving in the windows above, figures frozen in time, watching me as I hurried along the street. The air grew colder, and a feeling of oppressive melancholy weighed on my chest, making it hard to breathe. By the time I reached the end of Church Street, I was trembling, my flashlight shaking in my hands. I spoke to a local historian later, who confirmed that Church Street has a long history of hauntings, from apparitions of clergy to ghostly merchants, all connected to unresolved tragedies and lingering regrets. Walking alone along Church Street is not just a stroll through Chester's history, it's a confrontation with the past, with souls who never truly departed. Even now, weeks later, I can still feel that oppressive presence when I recall the evening. The street doesn't simply hold history, it holds the very essence of lives interrupted, memories that refuse to fade, and a silent warning to anyone who dares tread its cobblestones after dark. Church Street in Chester is beautiful by day, but at night, it's alive with whispers, shadows, and spirits that remind you that some histories refuse to rest. 12 Blickling Hall, Norfolk. Aberdeen is known for its granite architecture and bustling streets, but King Street has a reputation that even locals whisper about in hushed tones. One chilly winter evening, I decided to walk the street alone, hoping to experience the stories I had read about firsthand. The moment I stepped onto the cobblestones, an unnatural stillness seemed to descend over the street. Even though it was early evening, the usual hum of traffic and chatter was absent, replaced by an eerie quiet. The granite buildings, solid and imposing, cast long shadows under the flickering street lamps. Each step I took echoed strangely, almost as if the street itself were amplifying my movements. I shivered, wrapping my coat tighter, feeling that the air had a heaviness, a weight of history pressing down. Something about the street felt alive, yet not in a comforting way. It felt as though unseen eyes were tracking every step I took. Halfway down King Street, I noticed movement near an old abandoned warehouse. At first, I thought it was a stray cat or a trick of the light, but then a figure emerged, a tall man, dressed in a 19th century uniform. His eyes, dark and hollow, seemed to lock onto me, and a chill ran through my spine. I could sense despair radiating from him, a sorrow so profound that it made my chest ache. Then I heard whispers, faint at first, growing louder as I tried to locate the source. The voices seemed to come from the walls themselves, recounting fragments of conversations from centuries past. I felt dizzy, overwhelmed by the weight of lives that had passed here, the merchants, the laborers, and those who had met untimely ends along this very street. I remembered the stories locals had told me about apparitions of workers who had died during warehouse accidents, and now I felt their presence surrounding me. Suddenly, the figure stepped closer. His movements were smooth, almost gliding, and with each step, a cold gust of wind cut through the air. My heart raced, and my flashlight flickered as if struggling against an unseen force. I tried to speak, to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. The man stopped just a few feet away, raised his hand as if in warning, and then vanished into thin air. The chill lingered, and I felt a tingling sensation on my neck, like icy fingers brushing against my skin. As I continued walking, I noticed other fleeting shadows darting across the windows and narrow alleyways. Some seemed almost human, while others were just dark, amorphous shapes. I realized that King Street was more than just a historic thoroughfare. It was a repository of memories, tragedies, and unfinished business, where the past refused to release its hold. By the time I reached the end of the street, my hands were trembling, my heart still pounding. Later, a local historian explained that King Street had long been associated with tragic accidents, mysterious disappearances, and spectral sightings. Those who wander here alone at night often report feeling watched, hearing whispers, or glimpsing figures from another era. Walking King Street after dark is not a casual stroll. It's an encounter with history, with the unresolved and the unseen. Even now, I can still feel the weight of the street pressing on me, a reminder that some places carry memories far too strong to ever fade. King Street in Aberdeen is alive with the past, and its ghosts will make sure you never forget it. 13 Bury Pomeroy Castle, Devon. Brighton is a lively city, bustling with nightlife and tourists, but West Street carries a reputation that many locals avoid mentioning openly. I had heard stories of strange occurrences, ghostly sightings, and inexplicable feelings that visitors experienced after dark. One chilly autumn evening, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to walk West Street alone, hoping to witness some of its haunted tales firsthand. The street was dimly lit, neon signs flickering on and off above shuttered shops. The distant hum of late-night traffic felt oddly muted, as if the street had swallowed it whole. The scent of sea salt mixed with old cobblestones and damp bricks, giving the air a cold, metallic tang. Every footstep echoed unnaturally, and the shadows seemed deeper than they should be. My heart began to race, not from fear alone, but from anticipation of what lay ahead. As I reached the middle of West Street, I noticed movement near a deserted pub. A figure appeared, a young woman, her dress torn and faded, standing perfectly still. Her hair fluttered despite the absence of wind, and her eyes were wide, glassy, and unseeing. I froze, unsure if I should approach or retreat. The street felt heavier around her, a tangible pressure pressing against my chest. Then I heard the whisper, a soft, sorrowful voice calling a name I didn't recognize. It was distant yet intimate, like a plea for help. Goosebumps prickled my arms as I tried to locate the source, but it seemed to come from the figure herself. She raised a pale hand, pointing toward a dark alleyway. My instincts screamed at me to leave, yet I felt rooted, compelled to understand the presence that lingered there. I stepped closer, and the air turned icy, my breath forming clouds in the faint streetlight. As I neared the alley, I saw other figures, shadowy silhouettes moving slowly, almost drifting. Some wore old-fashioned clothing, others were faceless, their forms shifting like smoke. My mind raced, trying to rationalize what I was witnessing, but nothing made sense. These were no illusions. The street was alive with memories of the past, of lives abruptly ended, of tragedies long forgotten. A sudden gust of wind slammed the door of the pub behind me, making me jump. The woman in the alley vanished, leaving behind only the faint scent of roses mixed with something acrid, burnt wood, perhaps, or fire. I realized then that West Street was more than a haunted spot, it was a crossroads of pain, sorrow, and unfinished stories. Every shadow, every whisper, seemed to carry a fragment of its dark history. By the time I reached the end of West Street, I was shaking, my flashlight trembling in my hand. Locals later confirmed that the street has been haunted for decades, known for ghostly apparitions, sudden chills, and inexplicable sounds. Those who wander here alone at night often experience the same sensation I did, the weight of the past pressing on their shoulders, the gaze of unseen eyes following every step. Walking West Street after dark is not a casual stroll, it's a confrontation with the unseen. It's a reminder that some streets remember the tragedies, secrets, and sorrows of those who once walked them. Even now, I can recall the cold touch of the air, the whispers of the lost, and the feeling of being watched, and I know that West Street will haunt my memories long after that night. 14 Ancient Ram Inn, Gloucestershire. Newcastle is famous for its historic streets and vibrant nightlife, but Market Street is one place locals warn you to avoid after dark. I had heard whispers of strange happenings and ghost sightings for years, and one damp, foggy evening, I decided to see for myself. The moment I stepped onto the cobbled path, a heavy sense of unease settled over me. Even the usual sounds of the city, distant traffic, laughter, and footsteps, seemed muted, as if the street itself were swallowing them. The old buildings loomed over me, casting deep shadows that twisted and shifted in the dim streetlights. Every footstep echoed unnaturally, making me acutely aware of the silence surrounding me. I tried to convince myself it was only the fog playing tricks on my mind, but the cold prickling at the back of my neck suggested otherwise. As I approached the center of Market Street, I noticed a figure standing near an abandoned shop. At first, I thought it was a passerby, but the figure was motionless, dressed in 19th century attire, and seemed out of place against the modern surroundings. My stomach tightened with apprehension. The street felt heavier around the figure, a presence pressing down that made it difficult to breathe. Suddenly, I heard whispers coming from above, from the windows of the old buildings. The voices were fragmented, echoing phrases like, "Stay away," and "Don't follow," sending shivers down my spine. I looked up and saw shadowy forms moving behind broken glass, their faces pale and distorted. My heart pounded, I could feel a mix of fear and morbid curiosity driving me forward. The figure began to move, gliding rather than walking, passing through the faint fog. I felt compelled to follow, my flashlight trembling in my hand. As I did, I noticed faint footprints appearing on the cobblestones, though the ground was dry. The temperature dropped sharply, and a strange, metallic scent filled the air. Locals later told me that Market Street had long been associated with tragic accidents and unexplained deaths, and many believe the ghosts of those who perished still linger. A sudden chill swept through the street, making my skin crawl. I heard the clatter of unseen footsteps behind me, but when I turned, nothing was there. The whispers grew louder, overlapping in a chorus of sorrow and warning. I realized that the street itself seemed alive with the memories of past tragedies. Every shadow, every flicker of light, carried the weight of lives lost and secrets kept. By the time I reached the street's exit, I was trembling, my heart racing uncontrollably. Later, a local historian explained that many people walking Market Street alone after dark report seeing apparitions, hearing disembodied voices, and feeling an oppressive sense of being watched. The ghosts of Market Street, it seems, are not malevolent. They are echoes of unfinished stories, warnings from the past, and memories that refuse to fade. Walking Market Street at night is not just a stroll through Newcastle's history, it's a brush with the unseen, a confrontation with lives interrupted and spirits that linger. Even now, whenever I think of that night, I feel the weight of the street pressing on me, the whispers echoing in my mind, and the ghostly figures haunting my memory long after I left. 15 Glamis Castle, Scotland. York is one of the most historic cities in England, and its high street is often bustling with tourists and locals during the day. But when the sun sets and the shadows grow long, the street takes on a completely different character, a presence that few dare to speak of openly. I had heard stories from locals about ghostly sightings and strange occurrences along High Street, and one cold, misty evening, I decided to experience it for myself. The moment I stepped onto the cobblestones, a chill ran through me. The street, lined with centuries-old buildings, looked serene in the fading light, but the air felt heavy, almost as if it were carrying the weight of the past. Every footstep echoed loudly, bouncing off the walls, and the distant sound of a carriage bell, or perhaps my imagination, made my heart race. Halfway down the street, I noticed movement near a centuries-old building with shuttered windows. A figure appeared. A young bride, pale and ethereal, wearing a decaying Victorian wedding dress. Her veil trailed behind her, fluttering as if in a breeze that didn't exist. I froze, my stomach tightening. Something about her gaze pierced me, as though she were searching for someone, or something, that had been lost long ago. As I watched, the air seemed to grow colder, and I felt a heavy pressure on my chest. I could hear whispers, faint but insistent, carried through the narrow alleyways. They sounded like fragments of conversation, murmured warnings, and mournful cries. I realized then that the stories were true. High Street is a place where the past refuses to let go. The bride moved closer, gliding rather than walking. I could see the anguish in her face, her eyes filled with grief and longing. It felt as though she were replaying the trauma of her untimely death every night, trapped in a loop of sorrow and despair. I felt an overwhelming empathy for her, my own heart aching as I imagined the life she had lost, the wedding that never happened, the dreams that were abruptly stolen. Suddenly, I felt a cold hand brush my arm, not physical, but icy and real. I gasped and instinctively stepped back. The figure dissolved into the night, leaving behind only the faint scent of old roses and a sense of deep melancholy. I hurried along the street, my mind racing, trying to process what I had just experienced. Every shadow seemed alive, every flicker of light suspicious. Later, a local historian explained that High Street in York has been the site of countless tragic events over the centuries, untimely deaths, accidents, and stories of lovers lost too soon. The bride, many believe, is a spirit caught between worlds, endlessly wandering the street in search of peace. Others have reported hearing her footsteps, seeing her apparition in shop windows, or feeling sudden chills in otherwise warm evenings. Walking High Street at night is not a simple stroll, it is an encounter with history, with sorrow, and with spirits whose stories demand to be remembered. Even weeks later, I could still feel the weight of that night pressing on me, the cold brush of her presence lingering, a haunting reminder that some souls never truly find rest. High Street is beautiful in daylight, but at night, it tells a story of loss, longing, and unresolved grief. Those who dare to walk it alone may find themselves in a moment where the past and present collide, and where the spirits of York still roam in search of peace. 16 Whitby Abbey, North Yorkshire. The Shambles in York is famous for its crooked medieval buildings, narrow alleys, and vibrant shops by day. But when night falls, the street transforms into something almost unrecognizable, an eerie corridor where history, legend, and the supernatural collide. I had heard countless stories from locals about ghost sightings and unexplainable events, and one late autumn evening, curiosity and a thirst for the unknown drew me to walk the Shambles alone. As soon as I stepped onto the cobbled stones, the familiar charm of the street vanished. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, carrying a chill that had nothing to do with the season. The overhanging buildings created deep shadows, twisting and contorting in ways that made every corner seem alive. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, as though the street itself were amplifying them, and a faint whisper, almost like the rustle of old paper, tickled my ears. Halfway down the street, I noticed a figure standing near one of the old butcher shops. At first, it appeared to be a person, but the longer I stared, the more unreal they seemed. The figure was a small girl, no older than 10, dressed in tattered clothing from centuries past. Her face was pale and expressionless, yet her gaze seemed to pierce right through me. I froze, unable to look away, feeling a strange mixture of fear and empathy. Then I heard it, a soft giggle, followed by the sound of running footsteps, though no one else was on the street. The shadows around the girl flickered as if they were alive, and I felt a cold, invisible hand brush past my shoulder. Panic surged, but I couldn't move. I felt compelled to witness whatever was happening. The girl began to walk slowly, gliding rather than stepping, and the sound of her tiny footsteps echoed unnaturally against the stone walls. I noticed the windows of the old shops rattling slightly, even though there was no wind. Whispers floated through the air, fragmented phrases from the past, tales of merchants, butchers, and residents long gone. My mind raced, trying to rationalize what I was experiencing, but logic failed me. This was no mere legend. The presence on the Shambles was real, visceral, and overwhelming. Suddenly, the girl stopped and turned, her hollow eyes locking onto mine. I felt an indescribable sadness radiating from her, a longing that seemed to reach across centuries. The street around me seemed to pulse with energy, carrying the memories of tragedies, daily life, and untold secrets of all who had walked there before. Then, as quickly as she appeared, she vanished, leaving behind a faint scent of old leather and something metallic, like blood or rusted iron. By the time I left the Shambles, my hands were trembling and my heart still racing. Locals later confirmed that many people walking the street alone at night experience sudden chills, see apparitions, or feel unseen presences brushing past them. Some claim the spirits are playful, others say they are warning signs from the past, echoes of lives cut short or trapped between worlds. Walking the Shambles at night is not just a stroll through history, it is a journey into the memories and sorrows of centuries past. Every shadow, every whisper, every flicker of light carries a story waiting to be remembered. Even now, I can feel the weight of that night pressing on me, the cold brush of the little girl lingering in my mind, a haunting reminder that some places never truly let go of the past. The Shambles remains beautiful by day, a snapshot of medieval York. But at night, it is alive with the echoes of history, haunted by souls who refuse to fade, and for those brave enough to walk its narrow lanes, it offers a chilling glimpse into the otherworldly.